This second week of Lent in our This Is Us Lenten Worship Series, we turn our attention to the value of discipleship. You may remember that about 2 years ago we began our Healthy Plate Discipleship program. This simple, easy-to-manage concept of discipleship really does cover all the basics of Christian discipleship: worship, learning, praying, giving, serving, and playing. These are the ways in which we form our discipleship as individuals and as a church. This simple but all-encompassing concept of discipleship also describes what it means to be a church, really, today and ever since the earliest days of the Christian movement. We boil this concept down into what we call healthy plate discipleship because it helps us remember not only all the important aspects of Christian discipleship, but also that there needs to be a balance between these aspects. Using the balanced diet as a metaphor, it's easier to hold ourselves accountable for not only what we're doing to develop and maintain our discipleship, but how well we're striking that healthy balance we all aspire to as disciples of Jesus. You know, we live in a world of self-assessment. In recent times, there's been a surge of ways that we can measure different aspects of our health practices to see how we're really doing. In fact, we've become almost obsessive about it, really. We track our food, we count our steps, we monitor our water intake, we keep an eye on our blood pressure and heart rate, we measure the amount and quality of our sleep. Well, we don't really measure all those things. There is, as they say, an app for that. I have one of these, a Fitbit, and it measures those things for me. But how do you measure discipleship? It may surprise you to learn that this kind of obsessive measurement is not new, really, particularly when it comes to discipleship. It's a well-documented fact that John Wesley took his spiritual temperature every hour and recorded how he was doing on that in his journal. Can you imagine that? Every hour. How in the world did he really get anything else done? Thinking about Mr. Wesley's discipleship and his discipline reminds me of a young woman in a Methodism class that we had in Georgetown, Texas, where I was pastor. I had showed them a couple of pages of Mr. Wesley's diary where he documented his practice of taking his spiritual temperature every hour, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6, 7, 8, all the way down the page. You can see how he measured his spiritual health. He had quite a system for it, tracking things like his temperament, his devotion, his prayer, his service, whatever he was concerned with each hour, on the hour. It's a little bizarre, really, when you think about it. When you read those words, what he did and what he measured and the regularity of his entries. So I saw this woman in the grocery store and greeted her and asked, "How are you doing?" And as we all tend to ask when we run into someone we know. "Well, I'm fine," she said with a frown, but I've been worrying about Wesley." "How so?" I asked. I mean, after all, who worries about John Wesley, really? "Well, it really seems to me," she said, "well, kind of like write diary, wash my hands, write diary, wash my hands." Well, it does sound a little compulsive, doesn't it? But doesn't it also illustrate how important it was to him to keep up with how he was doing in his discipleship? He was certain of what he believed about discipleship, but he wanted to be sure to take notice of what he did every day to day, throughout the day, to walk that talk. He was definitely more intense about it than most of us could ever be. He was, after all, John Wesley. But come to think of it, maybe he wasn't that far out of line. Although lower tech, certainly from our smart devices, but he did pay attention, not only to his physical health, but his spiritual health. So how do we keep an eye on our spiritual life? How do we keep an eye on our spiritual health? How can we pay as much attention to our discipleship as we do our diet and exercise? Well, I look forward to exploring this idea with you, along with strategies for success, this Sunday in the sanctuary.